This session, it's called Transforming Agriculture, Harnessing Genetic Engineering and Synthetic Biology to Combat Climate Change. The motivation for this session is quite straightforward. We see climate change accelerating. Plant breeding has been there with agriculture for ages, and if the climate change is accelerating, of course we can ask whether it is possible and whether we should accelerate also plant breeding to keep up with the changes. And this is what we will discuss in this session. So it is built up in a way that first we will have a short presentation by junior researcher Martin Kala from Estonian Center of Rural Research and Knowledge, and then we will follow up with a discussion. And I would just like first to give floor to Martin, and then we will come with the panelists in front and take up the thoughts from where he ends. So Martin, please.
Thank you. I'm really pleased to be here. And to be honest, the first title here has been given to me generously by ChatGPT, and it's rather confusing. So I would honestly change the topic just a bit, specify. So GMOs. To be honest, to me, GMOs has been like recent years, recent decades, the biggest PR catastrophe. Like everyone's afraid of GMOs, and why though? Because most people just don't know what they are. But GMOs can be an enormously powerful tool. So, what do you think? What's the main difference between those plants? Just on top of your head, just what's the difference? Okay, obviously it's a trick question, since I was hoping that you would say that one of those is GMO, but actually no, because they're exactly the same thing, sprouted from the same seed, and they're just different pictures, really bad to be honest. And those are GMOs. Those are just recent pictures from the photo camera, but there's no relation to something difficult, something harmful, whatever. But I was trying to say that it depends on the context. Like you're coming here, you're seeing GMOs on the screen, and instantly you're saying that you're looking for some kind of like something has to look wrong. So some prejudice behind it is huge, to be honest. So I'm trying to tackle, or trying to show that the way people see GMOs isn't as it should be. But so about those climate facts, I'm not going to talk to you about like why we're here. You're here because climate is changing, and we have caused it. And there's enormous issues, enormous ways we could tackle the problem, but you know most of them. I'm not going to go through them. But so GMOs. We've been developing crops for thousands of years, I'll say. So, but for those thousands of years, climate has been pretty much the same. It hasn't changed that much. So we've been able to use slow techniques, natural techniques, to stay afloat. Just population has been climbing. We try to find things that grow better, are disease resistant, and have more yield. But nowadays we just can't get ahead because the climate is changing, pathogens moving around, and we need some new techniques. So now we've gone to the point that GMOs can be divided into two groups. Right? One of those that are considered like transgenic, just completely you take genes from other organisms, you put them into plants, you see something completely new coming out of it. But what we're trying to do, what we're doing right now, what the EU is trying to implement, is just to fasten up, just to speed up all the processes behind breeding techniques. So right now, on spring, we hope, the new proposal is passed. So currently the GMO legislation will get some kind of special term. They're grouped into two categories. One of them is NGT1 and NGT2. So NGT1 can be like exempt from the current legislation, and just because that there's no real data that it kind of differs from conventional breeding methods. But category 2, which is currently not touched because it's still being considered like dangerous, this will hold, but it has even more potentials afterwards. So what can be done? I'm talking about like it isn't dangerous or whatnot, but what are actually the techniques, the ways we can tackle climate change with those tools? Is one of those things is there's this institute in Loyola, California, SALT, which is focusing on carbon sequestration. So they're trying to breed plants that have just huge root systems which capture more carbon, and that could be implemented to all kinds of crops. So it's kind of logical. For example, like you have a field for carrots, and some years you just don't take it up. But what would happen? Hundreds of tons of carbon will be captured into the soil. But if you grow, for example, barley, then the roots stay behind. You're not gonna pull them up. So you could make the root systems even bigger, so the effect would be higher for the sequestration. So, and another way we could tackle, there's just the prediction of alternative protein sources. So, by the U.S. State Department. So, to be honest, this is a bit naive estimate because they expect that people's consumer habits change way faster than they obviously do. So why I'm showing you this graph is that by using like new kinds of breeding techniques, we could start producing animal-based protein using plants. Like there's estimate of by 2035, there's more animal cell-based cell culture systems. But by using precision fermentation, for example, you could start producing animal-based protein just from plants. So I don't have to kind of later, but currently fermentation, which has been used for thousands of years, is based on the carbon source is usually sugar. But if we will edit plants so that it will be more digestible for yeast, for example, or bacteria, then we could just feed the excess waste of crops to the yeast in bioreactors. We could harness proteins to purify them and get protein or any kinds of, to be honest, drugs, materials, such kinds of things. So we're gonna discuss those things further afterwards. But there's enormous potential of those new breeding techniques. So yeah, let's just leave it to imagination and laws. Thank you.
Thank you for this introduction. Now I would like to invite here you, Martin, but also two professors. Professor Aveliina Helm, she is Professor of Restoration Ecology and also Scientific Advisor of the Minister of Climate of the Republic of Estonia. And Professor Aveliina Helm, Professor of Sustainable Agriculture from Estonian University of Life Sciences. Please join us here. As Martin explained us briefly, it's quite clear that genetic engineering and more rapid plant breeding can be done. But we could always ask, could it be done, and could we do it, and should we do it? And first I would like to ask you, Aveliina, from your perspective, like as a scientist in restoration ecology, is this what we are discussing here, is this something that we should go forward to?
Indeed, we are in this very rapid era of change, and if we want to solve issues that were brought out, and this is the whole topic of this conference, we need alternative solutions to current state. I would, in that regard, I think every tool in our toolbox is a tool worth considering and finding I wouldn't say that we have best solutions, but we need a variety of solutions, because the problems we are facing are also have a big variety. So yes, I think what Martin brought out, new methods for solving the problem with our current food system, which is most notable not in the yield issue, but its environmental impacts issue. And if we have solutions in that direction, then they are of course worthwhile to consider and take into account. And EU is currently looking over its regulations regarding genetic engineering of crops, and Estonian government has supported the EU approaches to new varieties using novel tools. So my perspective as a scientist who is studying biodiversity and also genetic variation of species in nature, I would say that we should have right now more knowledge than we had in the times of Green Revolution in 1960s, or post-war development of new food system transformation. Knowledge of being able to foresee all the relevant aspects that come with new developments, and we should have, and we have, I am sure, if we think in this way, we have the possibilities to mitigate and eliminate far-reaching threats that might occur. I think we can go deeper into that, what I mean, but later.
Okay, thank you. Evelyn, you are, I guess it's fair to say, agriculturalist among us. And as Martin actually showed in one of the latest slides, is that there are actually much more applications for this kind of crops, also outside food and agriculture. So from your perspective, how do you see this issue? Is this really something that can help the food system, or is it's just a way to create better ways for producing plant-based raw materials for other industries?
I think I totally agree, Aveliina, with you that every tool, additional tools that we have in our set is beneficial. Like it will definitely help us forward. But as I said, yes, I'm interested in, I'm a fan of agronomy and crop production and how we can produce like enough food. Then I think what we need is a solution-based approach. And maybe two examples here are very suitable. One of them is coming from Canada, since I'm part Canadian, I would like to say, they started, when often we start from the bottom up, like I am a farmer, or I am like working for climate, I want to save something, I want to sequester more carbon, or I want to produce more food. And then we cannot get to the consumer, because they're like, the food comes from supermarket, right? Like there's often like this perception. And Canadians, they decided, okay, we need to take care of health of humans, and they were looking of their southern neighbors, we know who they are, And there's a saying that an apple a day keeps doctor away, right? And why don't Americans eat more apples? Why? Because who has children knows if you take an apple, you slice it up, it goes very quickly. If you have an apple as a whole, it doesn't go so quickly. And anyways, they made an apple which does not turn brown when it's sliced up. So it had actually two aims. One was to sort of get people to eat more fruits. Another one was to reduce waste, because if the apple doesn't go brown, then you don't have to throw it away when it's not appetizing anymore. And they have made it to the market, and it's one very good example. But it is people needed it, and that's why they took it up. Another example, this is very fresh. We just arrived from the Singapore pavilion, and there was a talk by one American scientist, Chris Abbott, I think was his name, and they have made, using this gene editing tool, they have made a bacteria, small microorganism, which is able to produce nitrogen on the spot. So, and they had a very nice slogan set about. They said, plant, but the plant doesn't need fertilizer, but it needs nutrients, it needs nitrogen. So, it's one way is that you're not giving it, the fish, you give it the tool to go fishing. And so, obviously, this is like one way where we can use this gene editing tool. It's a specific example that has been made by now. And we can reduce the use of fertilizers, which, it's a very big, carbon footprint comes from reduction of synthetic fertilizers. We talked this morning that organic fertilizer like manure, precious stuff, but we don't have it enough to keep the circle going. And this way, I think it's a very good example that we could actually use it to get the aims that we wanted. To get people fed and to keep the climate. I think it has a beneficial effect on climate as well.
Martin, I have also one question for you. In our organization where we both work, we also have gene bank department. And also there is like line of research focusing on bringing back underutilized and let's say forgotten crops into the actual practical agriculture. So, from your perspective, how do you see it? Is there also a role for this, let's say, library of crops that we cultivated before current crops? Does this library has any use also in your line of work, where you try to solve some of the problems that the current crops have?
The short answer is obviously, but it depends, because goals change. It's, like for thousands of years we've been focusing on increasing the yield, having the plants more resistant to diseases, whatnot. But now we need to sequester carbon, we need to grow materials, drugs, whatnot. So yeah, we could go dig into the gene banks, but nature has a way to optimize things. Like for example, the root thing, right? Roots tend to change the same size for a reason, because otherwise it wouldn't benefit the plant itself. But we need plants to benefit us, So we could go deep into those archives, find plants that kind of seem okay, and then we could edit them, because they have some base background which could be suited for our new needs. So obviously we need to go and categorize them again. But I guess we don't have too much time, so maybe some kind of specific examples you want to speak about.
I will pick this up and ask about and maybe emphasize the importance of natural genetic variation that has been evolving over millions of years, and this kind of the evolution itself has already brought us huge variation in genetic diversity and in our phylogenetic history, and I think we cannot distinguish ourselves from this historic evolutionary legacy, and that's why it is super important to govern and safeguard the wild relatives of crops and safeguard their diversity and overall nature's diversity, both species, habitat, genetic, phylogenetic, and functional diversity, which are all components. So why GMOs have been not so well taken by let's say European community historically. Well, the problems lie obviously not in the mechanism or in the tool, but the use of the tool that has not been beneficial to the wider aims, so that the GMO mechanisms historically or previously have led to crops that have instead of liberating farmers have led them into dependence of pesticides, of fertilizers from the same companies that have both doing gene editing and then pesticides. But what I want to emphasize is that it is a problem of a lack of regulation and the lack of clear aims, not the problem of the tool, of the mechanism. What we right now badly need is one thing, the rapid reduction of environmental impacts of the food system, including nutrient leaching to the nature and water bodies, which is one of the planetary boundaries we have so heavily crossed, the nitrogen and phosphorus in our systems. Plus, at the same time, second very interesting, very necessary thing when we consider kind of new green revolution, what we are talking about right now, is to recognize the boundaries where we need to stay. I want to remind that in 1960s and 70s, during the first green revolution, the Norman Borlaug, who was the father of this green revolution, Nobel Prize winner, who was crop breeder. He was the one who did the crops that are short wheat varieties that can grow in very warm climates. And but only then, later on, 20, 30 years later, some problems emerged with the crops. Like they took much water, they needed a lot of pesticides and fertilizers, and even then they had a discussion like that we have right now, that Norman Borlaug said that we can produce more crops, more food in smaller areas, which is true, and that is our current civilization kind of basis, what happened at that time. And then there were environmentalists at the same time saying that yes, we can do it, but we still have to understand that there are boundaries that we need to set. We didn't set those boundaries, and now we are kind of in the middle of a new challenge that we are solving with a new issue. My message is that we are now smarter, and we know what boundaries we must set, also when applying new tools that are relevant and necessary.
That's a good point, but I would differ in that sense that we don't need to increase the yield. We don't need to grow more food now. We need to grow more quality food now. We need to increase the nutritional value. We need to lessen the carbon footprint. There's way more goals to grasp. So the old goal system doesn't apply anymore. So, for example, if you talk about ecological conservation, for example, one of those goals is obviously reduction of pesticides, herbicides, whatnot. But GMO is exactly the same technology to free us from those compounds and bring back wildlife. If this fan is getting
exactly, I'm not saying that it is not true. This is exactly what I'm saying, and this was also exactly the discussion held 50 years ago. What I'm saying right now is that we need to know now better. Where does it take us, and set clear boundaries. But of course, it is so clear that we need these issues.
Yes, so I think we also need to ask the opinion of Aveliina on this issue. So what do you think? Are we now clever enough to avoid the possible negative externalities arising from these innovations that can only appear after, let's say, 20 years? Are we now experienced and smart enough to make this move? Or there are still some threats that might wake us?
I would start from the fact that we need to think what are the needs we have. Like you mentioned, leaching. Leaching is a major problem. When we sort of track back from there, why do we have leaching? It is like, let's say we're leaving even like agricultural systems away. Let's take like a natural grassland which has lots of legumes in it. And even there we have leaching because we have this nitrogen, which is, you know, especially in Estonian climate, we are losing it during the winter month. But if we go back to the field crops, what we need is more efficient nitrogen uptake. Like it's so sad that the plants are so inefficient in uptaking the nutrients. Like even either you give it to the plant like on the plate, so it's this like, very nice plate here, takes a food. It's like again like a baby who are like, okay, I'll take this and see what I don't want, which is unfortunate. And what I would maybe it's a question for you as well. So is that I don't know that we have made progress with finding solutions. Like how can we tweak this? Just take maximum, or like at least 80%, not just 50. It's like way too little. So this is like one thing about leaching that we need. Like we still have many things to do before we can get to this like what are the maybe the trade-offs or what effects else we have. And I guess some threats definitely can arise that we cannot find, but maybe what is I guess for Europe is that because US, Argentina, I think Australia as well, they have uptaken this technology a little bit before us, which I think would give us a little bit of heads up. Like we can see what they're doing, what they have learned, and this will help us in Europe as well.
Could we extend the session for half an hour maybe? But anyways, this was a great point because it touched this really touchy subject, which is we need to do, I wouldn't say less applied research, but way more like basic research. Because past few decades, okay, maybe 10 years, one decade, its focus has been only basically applied science. But as you know, all the innovation lies within basic science. If we don't have the basic building blocks, we can't make new results. We can't have new ideas. So as for the leaching issue, yeah, sure, I'm sure that there's a way that GMO technology could help, but there's not enough basic research done, and there's not much funding inside it. So I would say that we need more basic research.
Well, being a researcher myself, so I totally agree that we have still lots to do and so on. But another example as well, which is like one is the leaching problem. Another one, what farmers need today to meet the goals that we all want. We want to use less pesticide. Farmer doesn't want to use pesticides because I mean, if you could go without. But we have those diseases, and maybe the best example is Phytophthora, which is causing this devastating disease in potatoes. We have had it for, well, I mean, lots of people moved to Canada and US because of Phytophthora back in the day. And still today, even US, the other countries, who have this technology for so many years, no one has developed a Phytophthora proof or Phytophthora resilient or how to say variety. And the question would be, I don't have an answer, but why? Why don't we have? And in Estonia, I can tell you a bunch of diseases. The farmers, I mean, the farmers would be ready to use those technologies or varieties right away. But which gene, which tweaking we have to do? It's a good question.
Yes, so we are running to the end of the session, and I would like to finish with a little bit different question. So now if you think about your everyday work in a research group, right? For a moment, your students, colleagues, and the discussions you have within your group. I would like to ask all of you, how often you actually come to these cross-disciplinary issues? And do you, like, on a weekly basis or daily basis, meet colleagues from other disciplines to really pinpoint these cross-cutting issues? Because we saw here that even though at least you three come from more or less related field of expertise, there are still, how to say, not disciplinary approach, but this cross-disciplinary pinpoints are very, very important to really give input to each other. So, what is the current practice in your daily work in this regard?
The honest answer is probably only when we're writing proposals. We're looking for people that we need those interdisciplinary topics, things we can solve. But if we don't get the funding, then it's fine. We don't get along that much. But obviously, I agree that like we need to put our backs side by side and just work together and find new ideas. Maybe even put all the institutes together and force them to talk. But it's a problem, and personally, I don't know how to solve this communication issue. But science and arts need to work together.
I go a bit broader and I say that to finalize, this is a fact, the current food system is broken. It cannot continue like this. This is the topic of today's discussions. This is the topic that was discussed in plenary. There are multiple issues and problems that are involved with the current sector of food system. So little tweaks don't help. The major tweaks need to be done, and we can call it the new revolution. And this is one tool in the box of this new revolution. But in order to kind of catalyze this kind of change in how we produce food, how we eat food, and what kinds of food we eat, and what is the environmental impact of all the system, the whole system. This is not a matter of ecologists and agronomists only, but kind of a major scientific, social transformation. And this goes beyond this discussion. But I would say that in 20 years' time, we have either transformed this system or we have completely failed.
I agree, we need to talk more about the food systems when we get back to Tartu. Coming back to your question about how much we talk about different disciplines, totally not enough. Like, I do see people, different students, different farmers, also family-related events, but still I think this is something that I think in Estonia, because it's so small, we could make it happen more efficiently as we have done until now, but I think this event here helps a lot.
Thank you. Now, do we have any questions or reactions from the audience?
Yeah, hello. Just a really big question. GMOs are found in what areas in Europe? Do you think we are ready to remove this plant from legislation or not yet? And thank you for this interesting discussion.
I can say that having been following the discussions in the ministry in Estonia, ministries in Estonia regarding the new initiative for the new mechanisms, engineering, then I think yes, we are ready in a cautious way.
Do you use prescription drugs? Or any kinds of drugs? As you know, all drugs have side effects, but we still use them. We don't know all the effects that's going to happen like 20, 50 years afterwards, but we still use them. It's the same thing with GMOs. Obviously, there's dangers. We don't know all of them, but we take risks. And in the light of climate change, we have to start taking risks a bit faster, because otherwise we're going to keep up.
I would like to add that, again, it comes to things that if they solve a problem that we face, when I'm making the decision, is it there's an Apple example, then yes, the society is ready. If it's something abstract, that yes, it's GMO and it will save the world peace, too abstract. I'm not sure that this is going to be a reason enough. But in general, I think Europeans are believing in science, so that this could go. And another thing is a price. This is something that we cannot forget. That everything is good. We ask people, do you want this? Do you want that? Do you want this? I don't know, organic food? Yes, of course. Yes, yes. And then they go to the store. They count how much money they have. Also, people, have very limited amount of money, and they are forced to buy the cheapest. So again, if the technology can create something cheaper to us as customers, to the farmer, to anyone in the food system, it will help. But the trick is how can we do it so that it will be good for the climate and the environment, and how can it be cheaper as well? I think again, we need to work together.
Thank you. So I think now it's time to close the session. Many thanks to the great panelists. Let's make an applause. And we still have time to approach them individually. So thank you very much.